Can you hear me okay? You guys ready? Okay. We'll go ahead and get started. Gosh, I should have brought my bifocals. Yeah. Oh, well, you may have to help us read this. Blow that up? Yeah, there we go. So as we were talking at the last time, we were talking about creating some kind of a matrix that would, when we talked about empty residential houses, that we would have some kind of a matrix that would help us decide what to do with each of those. So from the conversation we had last time, this is my first attempt from what I heard to get it down on paper. And a lot of these things we've not defined yet. One of them, the first one is it in the residential, is it in the industrial buffer between the heavy industry and what we're going to do in residential? Well, we haven't gotten to that yet. But the idea would be if I could capture the concepts and we could get through this chart and you guys go, yeah, we don't know all that stuff yet, but yeah, Doug, that's kind of what we were thinking. Then as we get down to, global issue 10, global issue 11, as we get down to the nitty gritty of this is what we think it's going to look like, then I can circle back to this chart and make it reflect what we've been doing over the last several months. So that's kind of the style of what I started with. And so we're going to go through this real quick, and it's more, do I have the concepts right than is this the right order? We'll come back and we'll do that later. But the idea is, and I started up, well, the first thing these are residential houses that are vacant, that we come across when we're doing things with housing and we go, wait a minute, here's an empty house. What should we do with that house? And the first question is it located in the industrial buffer zone around AK that we may or may not make, and where it's going to be and all that we'll decide later. But the idea is if it's in the industrial buffer zone, then probably the answer is we tear it down, and whatever we decide we're going to use that buffer zone for, whether it's a parkland or whether it's woods or whatever it is, again, when we get there and we decide that, we demolish the house and we apply whatever the buffer plan is that we're doing, and that one's done. The answer is no, it's not in the industrial zone. And this gets back to what Mark Dixon was talking about. I was talking about the cost to, in moving Ohio forward, we used the cost to renovate the house to get it back to code. Mark was talking about the cost to get it back to where somebody could get financing on it, which is maybe a better value, better measure than the code compliance. And so, again, this is concept. Is the cost to get it FHA eligible more than 50% or less than 50% of the value of the house? It's a $50,000 house and it costs $27,000 to bring it back up so it could be financed. Probably, maybe, we should look at demolishing. And then again, if we demolish it, then we're going to go to our vacant land chart. We're going to talk about that after this, so we haven't defined any of that yet. If it's under 50% of the value, and again, these numbers can be changed based on how we talk about this as we go, then we move on. Is it subject to either a tax or a mortgage foreclosure at this time? House is empty. Is it under foreclosure? Is it subject to foreclosure? If it is, we probably need to let that process work, whether we take it through the land bank or whether we let the mortgage do their thing. It goes to sheriff's sale. We don't want to get in the middle of that process probably. If the answer is yes, wait to foreclosure, go back on to the next one. If the answer is no, it's not subject to foreclosure, or it's been through foreclosure and the bank has it or whatever, then we go down to the next one. Is it in a revitalization neighborhood? We're going to talk about which neighborhoods and which order we're going to do it. If it's in one of the revitalization neighborhoods, we have a revitalization plan for that neighborhood. Whatever the plan for that neighborhood is, we have vacant houses in that neighborhood. This is the criteria we said we're doing for that neighborhood. Bang, let's do that. No, it's not in a revitalization neighborhood. Is it 3 bedrooms or more? We know we have too many 2-bedroom houses. Again, this is concept. We may or may not apply this. Yes, it's 3 or more bedrooms. Then you go to value. Is it more than $50,000 in value for the house? If it's under $50,000, we may want to go to demolition. If it's less than 3 bedrooms, we may want to go to demolition. And then again, if anytime we go to demolition, we go on to the vacant land chart, which we haven't gotten to yet, and we apply that, and that's what we do with the unlot. And if it's more than $50,000 and it's more than 3 bedrooms and it's all these things that we think are okay, we go ahead and we seize it, we remodel it, we put it back in play, we put family in it, and we do that. That's the style of what I heard from our discussion last time. Again, we've not defined a lot of these variables, but is that the style of what you were talking about? Because that's my thought is every time we have the ability now to look at a vacant house and we say, this is 97 out of 100 times we're gonna do this. And if I don't do that on those last 3, I should be able to explain to you why we jumped off this chart in detail. And so when the community says, that house was fine, why did you do that? Okay, well, we started here, and then we went here, and then we went here, and then we went here, and this is where we got. And as a community, we've decided that was what we should be doing with vacant houses. That's why we did what we did. The answer is 9 on the 98th house. Yeah, but this one was an entryway to the neighborhood, and it still looked really good. And even though it was 2-bedroom, and it was really well maintained, and therefore we decided we're going to make an exception in this time, and that's why we let that one stand. Whatever the exception is. But it gives us a nice framework to go out and talk to the community about why we're doing what we're doing, how we got to where we are, and that the community bought in that, remember, we all said that this was what we want to do with vacant houses. Am I in the neighborhood of what you guys were thinking about as a way to look at it? Again, we haven't defined any of the variables yet, but that's the style, is to either it gets or it gets demolished, and if it gets demolished, it goes on to the vacant lot plan, and then we, again, do that one down to what we do with the final lot. But the idea is everybody should know why we did what we did, and we should consistently do the same thing each time we do it. So we'll start that. I'm just going to set that to the side for now. Probably 3 or 4 months later when we get most of this other stuff laid out. Because again, I don't remember if it's 9 or 10, but we're going to talk about some of the excess housing we have. We have too many 2-bedrooms. We have too many houses under 50,000. We have too many. What should we do with those? As we define some of those, I'll lay this in and I'll change it to reflect whatever it is we as a group decide we should be doing with those houses. But I will set that to the side for now and bring it back out after we define some of the variables, and then we'll fine tune it as we start laying out the actual policy of every time we see a vacant house, this is how we're going to handle it. So go.
Have you seen similar decision trees in your research that other groups have done?
I have not.
Okay. Just be nice to have something to test it against.
Yeah.
But we can build as we go.
Yeah, I have not found anybody that's trying to do what we're doing.
It's subjective.
Well, and that's the idea, but and there are always going to be exceptions to the rule. And I don't know what they are yet. I can't think of any, but 97 times out of 100 this will work. 3 times for whatever reason, I don't even know what they would be, it won't. And we'll have to stop and say, yeah, but here's why we did what we're doing. Go ahead. So tonight we're going to go ahead, thank you, and move on to vacant residential land. And this one's probably not going to take a tremendous amount of time, but I wanted to give everybody, again, an idea of the scope of what we're working on. Over the last 10 years, we've demolished about 500 houses in the community, which means we have 500 vacant residential lots. We sell, I'm guessing, 8 to 10 of them a year-ish to people for their side lots, to let them expand their yard for their family. The rest of them we are mowing at a cost of about $250,000 a year. Right now we have no policy that would allow us to put those to some final use, which means theoretically, unless we build on them, sell them, or do something else with them, we're going to spend $250,000 mowing vacant lots every year forever. And that's probably not the best long-term policy. Gets back again to what do we want to do? Green space, infill, community gardens. There's a whole lot of things we'll get to here that other communities have done. Go ahead, please. Had them plot the demolitions, the 500 vacant lots. I think it was 551, I think is what they plotted. It looks about like that. It's not a surprise where those are. Most of them were in the south end. And those are the lots that we're now mowing that we should be thinking about as we're moving forward. There were a few on the east end here and there and north, but predominantly downtown and headed south. Go ahead, please. This is in your materials. It's a little hard to read on the screen, but I asked Larry Tuttle, who oversees code enforcement, who oversees the nuisance mowing, to give us a chance. I said, just pick out a handful of lots and show what it costs to maintain one of those lots. And he just picked some on Crawford, some on Baltimore. And the answer is it's about $500 a lot per season to mow one of these lots 10, 12 times, depending on how the grass moves for the year. So again, those 13, 12, whatever those are, over the last 4 years have cost us $26,000. Well, we have 551 of them hanging out there. that we are mowing at a cost of about $500 a piece for the season, which gets to get to that $250,000 number. So go ahead, please. A lot of communities have done a lot of things with these lots, and some of them will have to decide whether any of them are on our toolbox list or when we use each one in the toolbox list. There have been little half-court basketball areas where you pave it and put a nice pole up and keep it going. Adopt a lot, where communities or businesses and things like that can adopt a lot. They'll put gardens and benches and stuff on it, and they'll agree to maintain it as part of their business. We'll give them some nice landscaping and siding so that, you know, yay, AK built this nice little thing for us, yay. Green space, which is honestly what we do now, and that's literally when we demolish a house, we seed it, we try to get the rocks out of it, we let the grass grow, and we mow the grass. It's just lawn. Infill construction. A lot of communities do infill, and we'll talk about as we get to some of these when we should and should not. Couple things with infill construction. Number one is if it's a buildable lot, we tore down a house, build a new one back, one for one. In other parts of the area, if you want to change the density of a street or a certain portion of streets, you could go in and take out 3 houses and combine it to 1 lot or 2 lots. And the idea would be that you could put bigger houses with bigger yards on that. Either one has been done. Obviously, the sale to the neighbor. We have a limited mow-to-own program we've had some problems with it. We've also had some success with it, where it says, it costs me about $40 to mow a lot, and we spend about $500 a year. We sell lots for $500, residential lots to neighbors. So if you want to mow it for one season, from spring till fall, and I don't have to spend $500, I will credit that $500 I didn't spend mowing back to you, next door neighbor, who wants the lot, and we'll transfer it and we'll call it even. So we've done a couple of those well. We've had a couple of those not work well, and we've gotten into fights with the people who didn't mow and all that. So we'll continue to evaluate that. You see things where people use them for pocket parks, local outdoor public art and culture exhibits, ongoing. And I've even seen walking trails through neighborhoods. You know, let's say we've taken houses down from 14th down to Lafayette, and there's a couple houses here and a couple here and each of those. And so you would build a walking trail, like down the 2 lots on 14th, walk down the alley a little bit, 2 lots on 15th, down over here, up 16th. You can put recreation stuff on there. You can put fitness stuff on there. You can just make it pretty with flowers, whatever it is you want to do. But the idea is to create some walking paths through the neighborhoods using those vacant lots. All of those have been done. Community gardens. You could have the 16th Avenue Community Gardens. If you live on 16th Avenue, we have 8 plots here. The first 8 people on 16th that want a plot, get it. We'll till it, we'll get it ready, and you can have a garden for the year. All kinds of things like that that have already been done successfully in other places. We'll have to give some thought as to when and how we use them. Go ahead. And so this is kind of where same way I did with the vacant. Can you blow that one up for us too? I tried to do the same thing that I did with the vacant houses, with the vacant lots. And again, if it's in the industrial buffer zone, which we haven't decided we want, or if we've decided where it's going to be yet, but the idea would be, if it's in the buffer zone around the heavy industry, then whatever we've decided that industrial buffer zone is going to look like, we'll apply that. Obviously, it's vacant already. Whatever the buffer says we do, we do. No, then is it in a revitalization neighborhood? If the vacant lot's in a revitalization neighborhood, the answer is yes. Is it buildable as laid out in the zoning code? If it is, look at an infill house. If it's not, go back up to whether or not it's not in a revitalization neighborhood. Is a lot of gateway into a neighborhood? If it is, again, hopefully we're going to have some ideas to create gateways into our different neighborhoods. If this is a lot that's right on the corner as you go into a neighborhood, we should figure out what we're going to do with that, turn it into a gateway, do something nice. Nope, it's not a gateway, it's just a lot in the middle of whatever. Does the neighbor want it for a side yard? Yes or no? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes it's rental, nobody wants it. If it's yes, sell it to a neighbor. No, select a final use for it. And the idea is, in my mind, we should have the ability to say, every one of these vacant lots, we're going to do something with it. I don't know what the something is, but we should, rather than just mow it forever, we should try to come up with some final use, whether the community helps us do something with it or whether we do a pocket park or public art. Parking off-street is another thing I've seen where you take one lot, you build a nice parking lot, put a little bit of lighting on it so that people can park off the street if they don't have a garage or anything for their alley. The idea would be that we come up with a final use for each one of these lots to the best of our ability, and we do something with them so that if we're going to mow them, at least they look nice from now on. If we can't find, and there'll be some lots that they're small, they're not buildable, nobody wants them. Well, they're ours. Let's do something with them.
Add a bedroom to the adjacent house.
Yeah, I mean, anything can be done.
Get your bedroom count up and get rid of a lot too.
And those, so it's one of the things we're going to talk about when we get to 2-bedroom houses is how many of these could we put a master suite out, front, side, back, wherever, and make them 3-bedroom, and now they're viable again, more attractive to people to move into. I think that's exactly right. Those are the types of things we could do. So that's, again, we haven't defined a lot of these things yet. We haven't defined what kinds of things we want to do with our empty lots. We haven't defined some of the things I put on there about a gateway. I literally pulled that out of my head and said, this is the kind of things we could look at. But this is kind of the thing that we're going to do with vacant lots. And what do we think about vacant residential lots? Because this is kind of this was again, from here to paper. And if we can have some discussion about what we're going to do with all these vacant lots that are buildable, aren't buildable, what's the final use, what types of things would we like to have in the community, what types of things do we not want in the community. And again, as we go into these, we'll get more specific when we get into revitalization neighborhood. Well, we actually have these 8 vacant lots in this neighborhood. What are we going to do with them? And then we can apply, if this is there, we can start with that. Is there a reason that we should jump off that because we're doing something in that neighborhood for revitalization? But that's the style of what I'm trying to do, is to build, again, another if-then, that by the time you get down, well, how come that vacant lot sat there? Well, this is why. We went tink, 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 and it said to do this. So what's the answer for 500 vacant lots? Because like I said, I think mowing them forever is probably not the smartest, but they're ours now. So we got to figure out something.
Just curious, do you ever consider splitting the lot to go to each adjoining neighbor?
We've never had, we've talked about it a few times. There's the cost of splitting the lot, which we have not, no one's gotten far enough along that they wanted to help us with the cost to split the lot.
It's gonna be more than the lot cost.
Right. And so at the end, it's like, you take it. And so one neighbor has ended up taking the whole lot at each time. The answer is yes, we could do that. But then you got to split the lot, then you got to probably want to consolidate it with the other ones. So you've got the cost of splitting the lot and then surveying for 2 new lots and then putting them all together again. The answer is yes, it can be done.
What is it, about $3 grand?
Something like that.
Probably.
Right. Yeah.
Depends on where the pins are that they've got to work from. It might be
Right.
Timbuktu.
Right.
And it's a little more.
So, we've got all these different things that communities have done.
Well, isn't that a little more palatable?
What we're finding is because so many of our neighborhoods are high rentals, the landlords don't want them.
Doesn't add any value
No,
to them if they're.
no. Why would I mow more and have to be maintained more and get cited for more and, yeah, pay taxes?
Change that will hopefully change too.
Yeah,
Because Section 8 isn't paying anymore based on your yard space.
right.
It's just paying it on
I
based
wonder if you
on.
could do like they do
appliances and
vacated streets, just an undivided half to each adjacent property owner.
I don't know. The question is, do they want it? Yeah,
Well, I mean.
and then
if that were
just
the
give
case,
it to them.
To avoid surveying it.
Yeah,
Doug, do we have, and I know it's early yet, so I
Yeah.
think I know the answer, but estimates on what, a public park might be or putting in parking? Because, even even on a present value basis, I mean, if we're gonna spend, I mean, you can't put down asphalt for a.
Well, we've got our crews, so we could,
Oh, I know, I guess, well.
we can do it cheaper than hire, but yeah,
I mean, what's the present
a
value?
parking value, and well, and once, whatever we create, we have to maintain.
Right, yeah, so.
So, you know, we put a
Oh,
nice
you're
little
asking
basketball
for
court, we don't want to turn it, you know, 10 years later, everything's ratty and nasty.
Yeah.
We've done that before, let's do better than that. You know, one of the things I'm going to talk to down the road is, do we create some kind of a homeownership association? If we're going to go in and renovate an entire neighborhood, does everybody put in, I mean, if there are 900 houses, if you even put in 50 cents a month, you know what I mean? For 900 houses for 12 months, all of a sudden I've got maybe, and I'm doing the math without, but you know, 15,000 that you could then use in that neighborhood to maintain the gateways and maintain the pocket park. And the idea would be, and I think part of the answer for the revitalization neighborhood should be a question of, are you willing to contribute to help maintain whatever we put together in the future? Because if the answer is no, then I think we are probably on a scaled back. If it's on us to maintain it forever, I think it's a scaled back. Then we'll make it nice. We'll get the sidewalks and the pavement, but we're not going to go too crazy. But if you can put a little bit of money in, then maybe we can add some trees down the street. Maybe we can put in a pocket park. Maybe we can do more if you're willing to help. Yes, ma'am.
As a homeowner in a crazy neighborhood, what if the absentee landlords who are not negligent or behind, fiscally irresponsible, when we go to vote on anything, talking about making a commitment, I have an uneven motivation. So as a property owner, I might be willing to do 50 cents, but what if I've got 5 rental houses on my block that this block really needs help? How do I get help with the landlord who's probably not gonna vote or gonna vote no?
Yeah, good
So
questions.
that's, I mean, there's that piece too.
I think that's a valid question. I
I
think
mean, I know
it's-
there's no answer, but I'm just saying there's that piece of saying, part of the problem is the percentage of renters,
Right.
and they have no particular motivation to talk about 50 cents. So, or whatever, that small amount, I mean,
Right.
50 cents is nothing. So how do that's something we have to consider. How do we allow those who are property owners to not be shortchanged in this process by those who are, and I'm, you know, I'm not assuming that they're all.
Well,
gonna vote
but if
no.
it's 60% rental, you may be outvoted before we get started. Right.
Yeah, I mean,
And so that's where, those are valid questions that we got to think through. You know, what can I impose? Again, it gets that balance between helping the neighborhood and listening to the neighborhood and then imposing my will on the neighborhood.
right.
And part of which also, I think we'll see a change in that balance over time too, as we move
If we,
away from some of the, you know, I mean, there'll be potential incentives for people to get out of the.
rental business,
If
Right.
not, you know, they gotta be code compliant, they gotta keep things up and.
Would be an incentive for the landlord as well, because if,
Short-term.
if it's a nicer neighborhood,
Right, if it's a
theoretically you
brand
get
neighborhood
more
up.
rent, you get your value of your rental's worth more,
Yeah.
and theoretically you're getting a better tenant and you're charging more rent.
That's, yes, we're there.
That's the
but
theory.
Remember where many of them are receiving their money, that process.
Yes.
Doesn't say, does it have to look nice? It just says, are there 3 bedrooms? Do you provide appliances?
Yes.
But, you know, but again, off-street parking in some of these neighborhoods could be a lot of value to some of the tenants even. I mean, tenants might post to say, hey, you know, that's worth
Yeah.
$2 a month or, I mean, off-street parking space in a lot of cities is, that's valuable real estate. Snowplow law.
Park even making you go
Yeah,
down
I mean,
to
some of
the
these narrow streets we got, you know.
But yeah, but you know, I'm just saying that here we go,
Well, they should be, yeah.
when we talk about voting or community.
Good question.
like a fence lot.
Attitude
Yeah.
or compliance,
I don't
or
know.
what you'd like to
To
do.
rent space in,
How
perhaps.
do we, how
Good
do we
question.
adjust for some people who have no vested interest whatsoever
Mm-hmm.
in our communities or in our neighborhoods?
That's,
Are any of these lots, vacant lots together? Do we know how many?
there are some, and that's going to be, that's where I think when we get to a revitalization neighborhood, and we looked at, we've knocked down 3, and then there's one house and then another one, do we knock down that 5th house and free up 5 lots, and then, again, maybe consolidate them into 3 and do 3 infill houses? Or again, that's where neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street, I think that's where we get into the nitty gritty of, because if you go down in 8th and 9th, down in that area, there's a number of places where there are multiple lots cleared along the line at the same time.
Right, right.
And so, yeah, what do we do with those to put them back in productive use again? Or a bigger park or whatever. So I'll blow your mind. As we build new houses, there's a park impact fee that we charge. I think it's $400 or $500 a house. And that fund has, I'm going from memory, so don't hold me to it, but around $170,000 in it. It cannot be used to maintain anything, but it can be used to build new parks. And so one of the things we could do is we could decommission some of these parks that don't hardly ever get used, use the park fund to build something new, theoretically, and then take maybe an existing park that almost never gets used, plat it out, build 4 or 5, 10 houses, whatever it is would be. But it's funny because when you talk about people say, oh, that's a park. It's been there forever. Well, that's true, but nobody uses it, and the equipment's terrible, and it just sits there and we mow it. And so what if we did something better with that park and then created a new park over here with the pool of money that we can use for that? And it'll be interesting to see how people react to that, because we've talked about, what if you created a new Smith Park and you used Smith Park to expand an industry at the airport? What? It's Smith Park, oh my God. I hear you, but let's, again, we don't necessarily have to do what we've always done. We certainly can, and there's a reason to respect the legacy, but.
Another question, is the only industrial buffer zone that we're talking about is around AK Steel? Or is it just heavy industry?
It's all heavy industry, yeah, and Ashley's gonna, matter of fact, I have to be gone at the next meeting. I'll be in Columbus. The next topic is actually code enforcement. We're gonna skip that because I can't be here. Ashley's been working on getting the industrial areas and what a 500 and 1,000 foot buffer would look like. She's gonna lead the next meeting for us, and we're gonna take, forget, 8, 10 sections and look at it. 15? And the idea is, here's 4 blocks around AK, here's the next 4 blocks. How many homes, how many businesses, how many rentals, how many vacant lots, and try to start looking at each area and decide, well, here Roosevelt goes, so if anything, north of Roosevelt we'll probably leave okay. Everything south of Roosevelt, let's look at this. But we'll start looking at sections of around all of our heavy industry and saying, should we do anything here? Let's go 5 more blocks. What about here? What about here? What about here? And try to start making some decisions. Well, here 500 is probably enough. Here we got some land. Let's make it 1,000 and spread it out a little bit. Over off the end of Highland, there's already some commercial zones and things like that you may not want to do anything. We kind of maybe already created a zone unintentionally by zoning it commercial in the past. But that's kind of how we'll do that. And again, if we can come to some generalizations about what we think, then as we start getting into the nitty-gritty, we'll lay it all out. Say, the industrial zone looks like this. There's none here. It's 500 feet here. It's 200 feet there. It goes up to 1,000 feet around this corner, and we're going to do this over here. And then again, we'll bring it back and say, this is what I understood. Is this what we believe? If that's our zone, are we okay that that's our zone? If that's our zone, what do we do in the zone? Every time we see a chance a house is empty, a house is vacant, a tax delinquent, we're going to try to get those houses one at a time over the next 10, 15 years, and we're going to start clearing them out. Once we clear them out, what are we going to do with our buffer? What do we do? Do we just let it go back to woods and we keep 15-foot perimeter mowed? Do we make a park out of it? We could expand Goldman Park and add more diamonds, theoretically, something like that. So the idea is, as we look at these sections, what should we do once we get the houses out of the way? What would we do then to permanently make that zone look whatever it is we want to make it look like? Welcome.
Would the industry want to increase their buffer? Say AK, for instance.
Right.
They're the ones that started that anyway.
I think, yeah. And we've had some just preliminary talks. I think if we cleared out some of that, I think if there was some parkland and things that we wanted, I think they might be willing to partner with us on some of that. that, and I was talking to some people here, and I've got a couple examples that was really cool, and I can't remember the industry, but one of them was a train station that they pulled back from the train station, but then they used the land that they used as the buffer from the train depot, and they put like an old locomotive, and they used whatever the industry was that was vacated and pulled back, they created parkland, and they used really cool pieces of whatever that industry was with historical signage and and I said, it'd be cool to put like an old, I don't know what they call it, but like the crucible that they pour the molten lava in, and the steel in and dump it. Wouldn't it be kind of cool to have this ladle, whatever it's called, was out there from 1929 to 1959 and used at the blast furnace. We poured it 3 times a day, and it created, this many tons of steel over its lifetime. That'd be kind of cool. Use it if you're going to build an AK buffer. Use some of their history to do some cool things. I mean, it would be neat. So, a lot of this, like I said, I think if this is in the general idea, if we could create something like this, is that again for our vacant land? I don't have any of the details, so I don't know what to do with each of these yet. But as we get forward, like I said, what I'd like to do is take the vacant houses, and if we demolish, then it goes to the vacant land. We get the vacant land. We know why we're doing what we're doing. And again, they're 97 down 100 times. We got to XXXX ink there. That's what we do. 98, 99, and 100, the last 3%, we go, normally we do this, but this is at an interesting, we have a special use for this because it's an odd-shaped lot, and it would be easier to do this with it. So, yes, ma'am.
So now, like vacant lots next to houses, if the house owner wants to buy that lot next to them, it's off the market?
For the next few months, until we get done with this process, and then decide.
Because I got a letter that said the lot was available, and then I got another letter that says, oh, sorry, it's not.
And that was a decision that we made with council last month, I believe, that while we were going through this process, and we were trying to decide what the highest end use of the vacant lots were, because we got, I think, 551, I think is what the number they gave me. Let's get through this process and then go back and say, now, based on what we think the highest and best use of these lots are, now let's reevaluate for the people who have letters of interest in. If the best interest is, in this one, is give it to the homeowner, we've already got the letter of interest ready and we're ready to go. But the idea is, yeah, we're going to hold for however long this process takes.
Okay, so it's not like set in sand that you can't have the lot next to you?
No. Nope, we just,
Might even be a better deal for you.
yeah.
Never know.
Yeah, I
So.
got one letter one day, and then 2 days later, I got the next letter. That's fine.
We changed our mind.
Gotta act quick in this market.
So, I mean, that's all I have for tonight. I wanted to kind of walk you through the vacant property, vacant housing chart, talk to you a little bit about vacant land, but, a lot of it there. Yes, ma'am. A lot of that's going to depend probably more specifically when we get to the revitalization neighborhoods. I've got 10 or 12 different things that communities have done as we get to those revitalization neighborhoods, and we know we're in this neighborhood is 5, 8, 10 blocks, whatever it is, and in that neighborhood, we know that there are 5, 8, 17 vacant lots. Now, let's see if this still applies, and then what are we going to do with each lot in the revitalization neighborhood? And then if we can get that laid out, we can then talk about where are we willing to open it up for the neighbor to get back, and we'll get back in the sales business of getting those off our books everywhere else. So, does that all make sense? Any comments, questions, anything? Like I said, a lot of it, you see how it all starts tying together. If we do this, we either remodel it, and then if we remodel it, this is how we remodel it. If we demolish it, and we go to the vacant land, and we do this. And the idea is, again, we get to a policy at the end of this where 98 times out of 100, everybody should understand and even if I don't like it, I agree and I understand the logic behind it and it makes sense. And I just wish you didn't do that to my house. Well, I get it, but for the betterment of the city, this is what we're going to do. And then once we get this set up, then we got to talk about if we're going to impact people, what do we do? If we are going to do something with your house that you don't like, what's the process? So, and we've got tools. We've got some tools out there. We've got some interesting things. We haven't gotten to them yet, but I can numb the blow some. I can help you for a period of time with taxes. There's a number of stuff out there, but at the end of the day, I can't do everything for everybody forever. And so the question will be, what's the line of what's fair the government should be doing to help people out? So I lied, 40 minutes. Anything else that we want to talk about on either vacant houses or vacant lots? As I said, at the next meeting, I'll be gone. I'm be in Columbus. Welcome, sir. You get him a packet when you get a chance. I'll be in Columbus for that Thursday, and Ashley will be starting. And if there are 15 areas that we're going to look at for the buffer, my guess is it's going to take more than one meeting, would be my guess.
I would like to split them.
I didn't hear you.
Would you want to split them?
Well, I think you'd start and just start moving through them, and as many as you get through. I've tried to keep the meetings to an hour and a half or 2 hours, so I'll kind of leave it up to you guys. I'll let Ashley start walking you through it. You get to an hour and a half and say, I've done enough for tonight, we'll stop and we'll regroup in 2 weeks and do it again. If you're like, no, we're making good progress, let's stay another half hour, I'll kind of let you guys work it out with Ashley how long you want to go. We want to be respectful of your time, so.
What I'll plan on doing too is having like probably 11 by 17s of each area, so if we don't get through them, you at least take them home and be able to see those buffer zones.
So.
I have another question.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
do you do about absent landlords in your neighborhood that, like they'll rent an apartment, it's like one of those transit ones, and then they don't do the maintenance, so the people move out, and then they pile all this stuff outside, and it's just out there, What's the guarantee that Rumpke will pick up that stuff?
Call in and report it.
Call in and report it. Rumpke's usually pretty good. I mean,
I was trying to wait till Friday to see, they got couches, they got 2 or 3 TVs, they got, a
If you have
toilet
big
come on.
furniture, you're supposed to call Rumpke.
yeah, they'll pick it up, but you have to do a special pickup for it.
Yeah, because they just lined it out there,
If
and
it's not
right
wrapped
there at
up,
the
they won't
alleyway.
take it, it'll be there.
Yeah, and it's like, I was watching, I says, hey, you can't put that out there. I said, the people that came to clear out the house said, all we were supposed to do is move it out.
And it depends on whether it was the landlord setting it out or the court setting it out too. That's the other piece, is
Yeah,
the court.
well, no, I think the people moved out, but then they put some out, and
But
then
they left all the rest of their
then
stuff
they
there.
left some, and then they put the rest out. It's like, just a whole row.
The enders, if it doesn't get called in, call us. Because, we'll get it cleaned up. We'll give the absentee landlord a chance to do it. And if they don't, we'll do it for them. And
In charge of it.
yeah. I've said before, we bill about $600,000 to $700,000 a year to properties in this community for abating nuisances. And we get about $250,000 of it back each year. So, and the rest of it's still sitting on the tax bill.
Almost cover our costs.
Yeah. So, anything else tonight?
What is the, sort of the final goal? And I'm sorry, I had missed the first.
Oh, that's all right.
Is it to just be able to get to the county land bank to initiate the big master plan that,
There'll be several different tools, and we deal with banks for donations. We deal with people who want to sell. The council has authorized me to buy some of the really cheap property. If we see a house for $6,000 on the market, I'm probably going to just try to snatch it up and buy it and destroy it, honestly. So there's going to be a number of different avenues that, again, is going to be when we see something that's bad, we want to define what to do. And we want to do it in a way that everybody understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, and it makes sense, and it betters the community. And so there's going to be a lot of tools to do that. Some Some are the land bank, some are demolitions, some are buying outright purchase, some are donations, some are getting nonprofits involved to help with code enforcement. I mean, there's going to be a lot of different moving pieces for all of this, but the idea is to strengthen our neighborhoods and start raising our property values.
And have a process we can follow.
A process that everybody understands, because it often seems we're kind of willy-nilly, and there's some truth to that. We have on different times been, but things like vacant lots, we have no policy for vacant lots in this community. We never, in the 13 years I've been here, we've never had a policy.
Never having 500 till.
Right.
2 years ago.
And so
New problem.
we probably need to define that better. We haven't done a great job with that, so now it's time to try to clean that up.
Okay, also, one of the touchy things is Section 8. We were heavily vested in Section 8 housing. Are we starting to get closer in balance there?
Getting closer, we're not there yet. The last time I looked was about 6 to 8 months ago. We were down in the 950 range. We were up at the worst at 1,700, Section 8. We're down in the 900 to 1,000 range.
And what's the average for a community R?
Around just under 800 would be average with the state average. So, I mean, we're still 100 to 200 heavy. We're going to talk about that at one of these later ones. The other piece is, everybody's harped on Section 8, which I understand, but the other piece of it is we have a lot of Butler Metro properties in the area, and we also have a number of low-income housing tax credit projects in the area that are locked in for 30 years. So even if you got rid of all the Section 8, we would still be heavy on subsidized housing. And there's not much at all we can do about that. I mean, they're locked in for 30 years.
Are they
And go ahead.
inspected the same way as,
No, but low-income housing is not at all.
oops,
None. There is nothing.
wasn't aware of that. I was thinking Butler Metro Housing should be involved with that.
No, that's completely separate everything.
Okay.
As a percentage of, let's take away all the government subsidies and not talk about them at all. Even if we just look at our rental properties, being Section 8 and non-Section 8, how's our balance?
We're still heavy. We're still a little heavy. We're about 200 heavy on Section 8.
Still heavy on rentals too. We're
We're-
like 47 versus the county level of.
About 30, yeah.
25.
High 20s.
Okay, that's, yeah,
So
those
that's
are my
overall
questions.
just rental
Rental,
properties.
we're still
We're
significantly,
20%
right.
ahead of the entire rest of the county.
Okay, then the other thing is, at the previous meeting that you were talking about, land developers, to be able to,
Renovate some of the homes,
yes.
rehabilitate and put them back in use again.
rehabilitate
Yeah.
neighborhoods.
Yes.
I mean, that sounds like the ultimate answer, but what does it take to get from here to there?
Give me about 4 more meetings and I'll get you there.
Oh, you're baiting us now.
There you go.
We've already got one developer who wants to go into the Baltimore neighborhood. He wants to redevelop the entire neighborhood. He just bought the Carnegie Library. He's going to renovate it, turn it into an architectural firm office. We're meeting with him again in a couple weeks, and I'm going to suggest that he now come to council. We're far enough along, and his concept has been vetted enough that we're probably going to bring him to council at some point soon and have him lay this out to council and make sure that you're comfortable with where they're headed. It's an incredibly smart way to do it. It's been done in Dayton in a couple neighborhoods very successfully. And so the idea is this something that we want to look at? And it's working, and it's working with the neighborhood.
Was this the guy that was working in the Grafton neighborhood?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Is this the library you say over on?
On First Avenue, yeah.
Across from Bell?
Yes, ma'am. So bring him, and if council said, it probably wouldn't hurt to bring him here and have him explain what he's done in Dayton and how he thinks it could be applied here. Because on paper, it's incredibly smart, and it involves the neighborhood. They have a number of neighborhood meetings. This is what we think we can do. They use, again, the mayor and I have talked several times about a community reinvestment area where if we go in and we renovate the neighborhood and property values go up by 40% or whatever, which is often what they said, they've had some that have gone up to 100%, that you put like a 10-year moratorium in that any raise in property taxes is covered for 10 years, that you're protected from 10 years from the increase in value of the house. Now again, it can't go on forever, but after 10 years, if your property goes up double, you might want to just sell it and take the profit and, you know, do something else. I don't know. I can't protect everybody forever, but I can give them a buffer that, you know, if we're paving the streets and fixing the sidewalks and the home values are all going up and we're getting more owners in there, we're doing infill and adding homeowners, that neighborhood should get better and better and better to live in, theoretically. All right, as always, I genuinely appreciate your time and your work, and sorry I came in. Thank you for stopping by.